Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Emmy and I'm an artist. Today I'm painting this mug made by my mom, Carol Yoon, who's a potter. She and I often work together on collaborative ceramics pieces, and today I want to try and talk you through my creative decision-making process as I paint this mug. One of the reasons I started making YouTube videos is because I love learning about the internal thought process of artists when it comes to making their art, and I wanted to see more videos of artists talking through the whys of their art-making choices. Why are they making the creative decisions they're making? What is it that they're trying to achieve in each piece? And what choices are they making to get those results? As I'm writing this script, though, I realized it's actually pretty difficult to explain the internal creative process out loud because I'm often working with multiple thoughts and ideas at the same time. And a lot of creative decisions are made on a gut instinct, subconscious kind of level as well. So we'll see how this goes. But my goal here anyway is to give you a look at my creative decision-making process as clearly and honestly as possible. In this particular piece, I'm not really doing anything conceptual or symbolic. It's really just the decorative design choices that I'll be talking you through. But I'm hoping to make more videos like this in the future where I'll talk about some of the pieces that do have specific meanings behind them. This is kind of just a practice run to see how it goes. So for this mug, I'm going to be basing the design off of a different mug I painted, basically doing a variation on that design. I'll be using the same colors, black and yellow and white, and I'm sticking with an overall similar design concept, using these black lines to divide the mug into sections and having imagery of moths and leaves and nature type stuff. And other than that, I'll make the decisions as I go, and I'll do my best to talk you through each of those decisions. Before I get into the rest of the video though, I want to take a minute to encourage you to participate in the ongoing boycott organized by BDS, the Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. I'm not sponsored by BDS or affiliated with them in any way, I just personally agree with their movement and I want to support them. As I'm sure you're aware, Israel is currently committing a genocide in Palestine, occupying and colonizing Palestinian land, and denying Palestinians the right to return to their homes. One of the ways Palestinians are requesting our support is through this targeted boycott. A targeted boycott means you're boycotting a very small number of specific companies and products for maximum impact. So the companies listed at the top of this infographic are the priority targets, and the ones below that are additional targets that BDS is encouraging us to boycott as well. I'll link below to the BDS website and their boycott guide if you want more information about why these companies in particular are being boycotted and specifics on their complicity in the ongoing genocide. I encourage you to do your own research and share this infographic on your social media if you'd like. Thanks for listening, and now back to the video. So my first step in pretty much any piece is to sketch lines on it, to section off different areas and mark where the sides are. So that's what I'm doing now, just using a pencil and spinning the mug on a weighted turntable so it gets a straight line all around. I'm also drawing pencil marks to divide the mug into 4 quadrants here. I like to lay a pencil across the top of the mug to help me find the center. I don't always do this much measuring for a piece. It really depends what I'm going to be painting, but for this particular mug, I just need to mark all the lines so I know where to paint the black lines that you see in the design, so they're all symmetrical on all sides of the mug. Now I'm using my kneaded eraser to gently lighten all the pencil marks so they aren't as visible. The pencil marks will burn off in the kiln when it's fired anyway, so it's not necessary to erase them, but I just find it helps me make sure I don't miss any spots while I'm painting. I started by painting this gray stripe all around the outside of the mug because the original mug design I was basing it on had a gray stripe there, but the original mug was much taller and had the handle placed lower down, so there was more room for the gray stripe to go all around, whereas on this mug, the handle blocks me from painting the whole stripe. And I don't like how that looks, so I'm just rinsing off the mug and starting over with a clean surface. I'm putting the reference photo of the original mug in the corner of the screen also, so you can see what I'm looking at while I'm painting. I just keep a photo of it on my desk. I used Amico black underlays to paint a thick rim on the edge of the mug. I'm going with a thick stripe because I know I want to paint more decorative elements onto it later, so it has to be wide enough to fit those details. And I'm just continuing that black color onto the inside of the mug too, because I think it looks very dramatic and it just feels good and indulgent to paint a big area of black. And it also means I don't have to worry about painting the other edge of the black stripe neatly. I'm switching from my flat brush over to this thin liner brush now to paint the small lines, just painting lines here that are very similar to the ones in my reference mug. A tip here for how I keep my hands steady is I brace it against the mug and I hold the brush still in my fingers and just move my wrist, like swivel it, to get the line that I want. And that way I don't have to worry about holding my arm steady or making my fingers move correctly. It's just one small movement of the wrist. A whole lot of painting pottery is in how you physically hold and position the piece. Because it's three-dimensional, the shape of the piece itself can really affect how difficult it is to paint certain areas on the piece. So I like to test out different movements and angles to see what gets me the results I want with each particular brush. And that's also why I tend to use the same 3 or so brushes on basically every piece. You'll see them in all of my videos, because I'm really familiar with these tools, so I know what result they'll give me when I move them in a particular way. So much of art is just about allowing yourself the time to get comfortable and familiar with your materials. So if you're starting out and you're struggling, I recommend spending time just experimenting with different tools, see what results you like best, and then really dig in on a certain tool and see what you can get it to do in all kinds of scenarios. For this moth-like shape, I'm pretty much copying the one from the original mug, painting the black parts first, and then I'll add the white and yellow details later on top. This was a design I just came up with when I painted the original mug. I think I was just putting down shapes and then tweaking them until I liked the result. I don't think I intended it to be a moth at the start, but since it ended up kind of looking like that, I just went with it and then gave it this abstract flower head. Now I'm painting a bunch of tiny lines around the edge to give the piece that sense of detail and intricacy. This is one of those more is more kind of designs, so I'm just trying to fit in as much detail as I can reasonably manage. If you look close, you can see the lines on this new mug here look more small and pointy than the same lines on the original mug. That's because I'm using a squeeze bottle for the lines this time, whereas the first time I used a small paintbrush. I'm trying out the squeeze bottle method because it's a lot faster, and I ended up liking the result just the same, so I'll probably do that in the future. Now I'm adding these ornamental shapes that I think originally came from a Japanese pattern book, but I honestly don't remember because it was a long time ago. They're actually really frustrating and fussy shapes to draw, so I don't know if I'm going to keep doing these because it's just hard to get them to come out right. I wasn't totally happy with how these ones turned out this time, but it's good enough. Next, I'm painting some decorative, bubbly kind of shapes in the lower half of the mug. I think this shape is sort of reminiscent of flowers and flower petals, but it also reminds me of a segmented creature like a millipede or a trilobite. And I'm also adding these little leaves just because I think they look cute and they fit nicely into the space. I wanted to add something new to this blank area, so I'm referencing a pattern book called Designer's Guide to Japanese Patterns by Jean Allen. It's volume 2 if you're curious. These type of pattern books are some of my favorite places to get visual inspiration for art, and I found a ton of them in used bookstores, both in person and online. I'm planning to make a video at some point showing you all the different pattern books I have just because I think they're so fun. The particular pattern I chose this time is called Flowered Gates and Rabbits, according to Jean Allen. I'm not sure where she got that title or what it's called in Japanese, but anyway, I'm not using the rabbit part of it, just the plant design. I think the shape of this design matches the rest of my mug pretty well, and it also looks like it won't be too tricky to paint. That is a big consideration I use when I'm choosing patterns because some of them are much more forgiving than others in terms of how careful you need to be to get it to look right. For pottery painting especially, I tend to gravitate towards very simple patterns and motifs that I can use to improvise around, instead of designs that require a lot of specific measurements or lining shapes up in a precise way. It just saves me a lot of time and headache. So if you ever see me use a pattern in one piece and then I never use it again, it's probably I just decided it was too much of a pain in the ass to work with. Okay, finally breaking out the colors now. So this is the Sunflower Yellow Underglaze made by Clay Art Center in Tacoma, Washington. I found the Clay Art Center underglazes are a little more thick and they dry faster compared to the Amico underglazes that I tend to use. So they're a bit harder for me to work with, but they do have a lot of colors that I like. I'm using a slightly wider tip than usual on this squeeze bottle because the thin tip tends to get clogged up with the thicker underglazes. And the bottle tips I get here are interchangeable, so you can take them off and clean them and swap them out. It's just very convenient. I'm just doing tiny dots all around the background here because I just got tired of adding details and I kind of wanted to be done. And dots are a great way to fill in empty space that still looks detailed and intricate. Now I'm painting slightly larger yellow dots around the black rim, and these will be the centers of the daisy flowers that I'm going to paint. I'm using Amico white underglaze to paint the daisy petals. I actually find Amico's white underglaze to be a bit too thin and watery. It can be kind of runny and hard to control using with the squeeze bottle. So what I like to do with a new jar is just leave it open while I'm working and just stir it every once in a while, let it kind of slowly dry out and thicken up a little over the course of like an hour before I pour it into the squeeze bottle. I'm adding a second layer of underglaze to these daisies to make sure the colors will show up against the black background. For the white petals, I use this dotting tool to add a tiny bit of extra white to each petal because it allows me to be a bit more precise than the squeeze bottle. I'm also using a tiny paintbrush and that same dotting tool to add details to the moth shapes. This moth is kind of the star of the show on this mug, so I'm just going all out with the details on it. Now I'm just adding a few more details here and there, some yellow dots and gray stripes to fill in any empty areas. And I'm outlining my mom's signature stamp and writing my own signature on the piece, and then just touching up the rim a bit because a couple areas were looking a little patchy. And that's the piece all painted and ready to be clear glazed and fired. So here's what it looks like after glaze firing. I apologize because I only have this one photo. I'm trying to film the pieces that I feature in my videos so you can see more of the angles of them, but this time I just forgot. But I'm really happy with how this one turned out. I can already think of a few things I want to do differently the next time I paint one of these mugs. I want to figure out something else to put in place of the circular flower motif thing that's really difficult to paint. And I might want to try using other colors than yellow next time. I think red and black would be fun. I think that's all I have to say on this one. So let me know if you found this interesting or educational to follow my thought process here. Was there anything you wanted me to cover that I didn't? Just feel free to comment with any questions too, and I'll do my best to answer you. Thank you for all the support and interest on my videos also. I think it's really cool that you guys want to listen to me talk about painting and just watch me make stuff. I really appreciate that, so thank you. If you're interested in buying me and my mom's work, we sell it at Good Earth Pottery, which I will link in the description. And also one more reminder here to check out BDS and support their boycott. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.